Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
I would like to invite you all to the panel. I will just say your names again. I invite Deborah, Mel, Suk, and Sue to the panel. You all have had such compelling personal stories. You know, Deb, yours with a near fatal car accident. Mel, really, when I look at your pictures on Facebook, I don't see disability, I only see the ability. So, you know, you've talked about how your life changed in a heartbeat and how you're helping other people meet death in the most empowered way. We have Sue, who's made the choice to heal trauma that has come right from the beginning of her life. My question to all of you is, I think someone mentioned a statistic that maybe 70% of the people, you know, they go through trauma in their lives. You know, many of them go through complex trauma. And, you know, pretty much everyone, all these people have gone through issues of survival, of impossible odds. And most people in the world, they actually fall. They keep falling once they are confronted with this crisis. And there are very few who manage to soar, who manage to make the impossible possible, who manage to make the trauma into a triumph. What is it that differentiates the people who are able to rise? I think everyone has the fall, but what differentiates people who are actually able to make that rise? Could you enlighten us on that? So I'd love to hear from everyone. Yes, Deb. Oh, I thought you.
Yeah. I think there's a few things that come into play. Of course, you know, around where someone is in terms of what country they live in, what their opportunities are. There's a whole, you know. But if we move that aside and we think about what we can do internally, it's very much around our own self-belief. So what our own thought processes are, what our true core beliefs are, which we formulate in really the first 7 years of our life, the core ones anyway. And it's very much around that belief system of, you know, and what we focus on as well. So what, you know, if we fall into, I'm the victim, this has happened to me. If we fall into, if we buy into the limits that are presented to us, if we accept them, that's exactly what we get. So I think one of the differentiating traits or choices is where we decide to look beyond what's being presented to us, look beyond what society says. Like, for example, if I use myself as an example, because that's the closest thing I can use, is, okay, brain prognosis, brain damage, blind in the right eye, won't look like herself, might not remember, won't be independent. If I'd retreated in fear, if I'd accepted that, that's exactly what I would have gotten. So, and it's that, it's almost a defiance in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's a bit of a rebellious streak, perhaps. You know, it's that I often say I've got a bit of a stubborn streak in me. I said, no, this is not what I want. So I think if I think about the way I was brought up as well, I have very strong role models that would, you know, there's a joke about my father in that, you know, he would half his arm would be hanging off and he'd be like, oh, it's okay, just put a plaster on it, keep working, you know, just tough, you know. And my mother had gone through a horrendous car accident and broken her leg when I was very little, and I just saw her push through that. I mean, she was supposed to walk with a limp, however she doesn't. She's in her 70s now and can still wear a pair of heels if she wants to. So, you know, this is something that, these things formulate the way we view things. So that comes into place, as does what's inside us. But it's very much around sometimes going against the grain, the assumptions. Oh, you smashed your face in, so poor you. Let's be victim. I don't accept what victim is into my life, because as soon as I do, I'm powerless. So I think that's something that comes in.
I hear what you're saying, Deborah, but for me, it's quite different. I think for me, it's like I've had that profound experience that I had, and many other things in my life, but that particular was a pinnacle one, and also maybe the things to do with my family. And for me, it's very much like it was so hard to deal with that I really want to make it easier for anyone else. I don't want anyone else to go through what I had to do. And that's what drives me every day, is really whatever I can do to make sure other people don't have to suffer and have that pain, by encouraging them to take the steps to help themselves and to help their families. So that's what really motivates and drives me day in, day out.
Yeah, and I'm with you with that. And I think that's what we all share here as well, in that I acknowledged that, not everyone has certain beliefs or family structure or support or certain defiant attitude or whatever it is. And that's why I do what I do as well, because we all have it in us. But sometimes that extra helping hand, those tools, that guiding hand. And I'm like, well, if I can do that, then I can help anybody else. And that's what drives me. So I really connect to what you're saying there. I completely agree with you, because that's where people that have been through something, that either have something in them or have learned something along the way or could find that, can then spread that message to others that perhaps don't have that or feel that they don't have that or like you said, have that support structure, give them those tools. So yeah, I think that's absolutely beautiful. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I agree with everything that everyone said. And I guess for me, it really comes down to the education that's out there. So us educating people that are in our personal lives, but in our professional lives, etc. And for me, that's been something that I've had to do my whole life. With all of the ins and outs of hospitals and different issues that I've had to go through, and even just simple things as, when I do traveling, so I'm traveling around the country or overseas, there's different cultures, but even when there's not the different cultures, but just simple things about going to stay at a hotel, like you won't, people don't always understand the levels of barriers that will be out there for people that have different abilities because of having a disability. So the anxiety that comes into that as well. So trying to eliminate some of those barriers for other people. So that's where my education comes in, because, I've been really blessed, I guess, in the fact that I've got people in my life, and that's in my family and my friends and my, my life circle. As such. So I've always got that support, but, I'm also very aware that not everyone always has that support, and particularly when they're going through trauma. So if you put trauma on top of what's happening for a person, then they're not necessarily always got that support. So trying to put as much information out there to eliminate those barriers because essentially barriers are all what's in the environment, and it's the attitudes that come towards the person, as opposed to it being about the person with what's happening for them.
One of the things that I find very difficult is that a lot of disabilities and trauma we can't actually see, and people don't understand those disabilities. I mean, look at us all on the screen. We look all really pretty cool, but I know for certain two of us here don't have one eye. So, my daughter grew up with diabetes type 1, and you can't see that. She looks a pretty healthy, child from the outside, but people don't understand the profound impact that has on her life. And I mean, that's just, a couple of examples, but but there are, trauma and disabilities and mental health that we can't see are very difficult for people to understand and relate to and empathize with. And I think there is a big challenge there for us as a society to be able to navigate that. I'm glad to say, people are much more aware of big issues of domestic violence and trauma, and people are beginning to understand that. I hate using the word disability, actually. I always like to use the word ability, but those with less ability, maybe I should say, that we need to accommodate that. And of course, my huge one is I can't stand any prejudices against race and religion and colour. So I think on the whole, the world is becoming more tolerant. But I do think there's still a long way to go. And the more we do in educating people about overcoming adversity and all the other things in the world, which aren't kind of quite right, it's all good.
I hear what you all are saying, and even personally, my son is on the autism spectrum, so I do meet people from these kind of communities, and I love when they're taking their own voice, when they are deciding. My son doesn't mind being called. He himself says I have a disability, but he has owned it in such a way. And I think it's a choice for every person. And he at 11 has really owned it. And he talks about it. And he's like, these are my superpowers. And these are my challenges. And I'm like, more power to you. So I really love the work you're doing. Sue, I want to hear from you also what you think, what differentiates,
I think when the people is still living in the trauma, or some of them, they might actually not aware of it. And so once they gain the awareness, first of all, it's really going to listen.
Do you mean like denial? Like they deny that they are in that trauma? Like, is that
they've been living there? They've been living in there for so long. They just get too comfortable with it. They thought this is how the life is supposed to be, and this is the way it is. And so a couple of things is, if they receive more information, they listen to more, like how we share here today. Of course, they give them more insight. And secondly, many of them might think, oh, I have no power, like I can't do it. It's too hard. And I don't know where to start. It seems too big chunk of it. And so like Suki said, like put it to bite size for them to easily digest, and which is great. And also really as a living sample. So everyone comes to this world have a purpose. Everyone have a story, no matter big or small. Trauma for me is not defined as a really big things happen in life to cause that trauma. That can be very tiny thing they experience in daily life can cause them trauma. So first of all, I think if they can tap in to really listen what my body's saying, what my emotional saying, then they can get clear, okay, there is something not quite right here. I wouldn't say that wrong. And the second thing is people might don't know what they want to do yet, but they certainly know what they doesn't want. So if they can start with that point, they can know, okay, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want to experience that. It's actually make them easier to slowly find a way to find what do they want. Yeah.
Thank you, Sue. Sue, you were talking about stories, and you have all shared very compelling personal stories. It feels like in every story, there is a point, there's a lowest point, and then and after that point, things start to change. And for some people that comes, and for some people that doesn't. Could you share, and this could be your story or someone else you helped, you empowered, it could be either one, but could you walk us through what was that lowest point? And if you could take us there, because I know there's so many of us listening and who might be going, that point might be happening to them right now. So if you could take us to what was your lowest point and what was your personal rock bottom, and then what made you rise from that point? If you could take us there, it could be your story or anyone you have helped empower. Anyone is welcome to start.
Yeah.
Were you going,
so
Deborah?
I will go first.
Okay, sure.
The lowest point for me, my journey was obviously the time I know my nanny was passed away. For me, I almost feels like my whole world was collapsed, and I was only 13 that time. So I wasn't sure what to do. Then the long period of time that I tried to escape reality and try to lock myself up, I give more free time, my head space to really think instead of constantly getting more stimulated or distracted by the external world. Then I think from that point, then I start to think and process. I built a quite a good habit since I was a child that I love reading. Then I started reading tons of books. I remember my first book was start reading The Chicken Soup. And I just feel that very happy. And I start to think, okay, I want to be that as well. I want to be happy. So then I have that in my heart, that almost like a goal for me to go and reach. And after that is constantly telling myself, I do a lot of self-internal talk since I was really young, before I know what is meditate was. And so I think really open a dialogue within yourself can helps a lot, helps to answer a lot of questions as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Sia.
For me, it's not just one low point in my life. Unfortunately, there have been several low points. And so for me, it's always being able to pick myself up and move on forward, and the ability literally to pick myself up from being thrown on the floor and to move on has been really important. And I think that's kind of like my personal life, and I find it very difficult still to speak about some of those things that have happened. But on a professional life, the ability to be able to always get up and do something, and you can always find a way, and there's so much information available these days, you can almost do anything. And so, you know, one of the things I say to everybody is we do have a unique story, and we very much have a unique story. And some of that can't really actually be shared till perhaps after our death, or some of those feelings and those emotions are too difficult to share after our death. And so that's why I really do encourage people to journal about their life and start capturing their story, because it is really important. It's important to ourselves, but it's also important to our family and friends, and then the wider community, and what you're able to share to help other people overcome adversity going forward. So I guess, yeah, I kind of gonna have to wait until after my death to reveal some of my the things I've been through, but that's okay. I'm enjoying motivating people to really capture their story and organize their lives right now, and that's where my focus is.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk. So I kind of agree. So I guess a lot of low points for me haven't been one singular event. It's been multiple events over the years, not just for myself, but what I've witnessed for other people that I've worked with, or I know that have different types of disability, etc. And often it's around when services or resources aren't available for the person to be able to continue etc., or there's a lack of education for people to understand what that person might actually require at that particular point in time. But I guess for the thing that really struck for me is probably one of the lowest points in my life was when I was, it was probably about 2 months before ending up in a wheelchair, and I had quite difficulty in being able to walk at that point in time. And there was this particular day that I had no ability to be able to walk, and I was sitting at the computer and I was doing my schoolwork because I was in year 8 at that time. And back then, because it was 25 odd years ago, there was no such thing as mobile phones. It was all the on the wall telephones, etc. And my mother was outside hanging the washing and the phone rang. And because I was sitting on the computer chair that had the wheels on the ground, but not the big wheels because it wasn't a wheelchair, I wasn't able to actually get to the phone and stuff. And I remember that being the point of my mind going, that we need to actually do things in this world to be more accessible and more inclusive for people and have different opportunities out there. And because that was such a huge impact for me, but it was something so tiny, but it made me from this day forward going, that people out there, because there's people that have disability that have been institutionalized across the world and haven't had those opportunities because of mobility, and mobility is such a huge thing, as well as every other part of disability, and that includes communication, etc. So I guess that was a big low, well, I shouldn't say big, but it was a low point, but it was as we've mentioned, it's not the only low point, and it should also be pointed out that everybody's going to have low points in their life, and just because one person can tell their story doesn't mean that their story is any better or any different or any more tragic than the next person, because all of our stories are ours, and that's what's actually shaped us to be who we are as individuals. So I think that's really important to acknowledge, to not compare ourselves to one another, because we've all got our own stories.
Yes, Deb, would you like to share?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I agree with that, Mel, that last point. Absolutely. That's so very true. Probably no surprises here, but I too have had more traumas than the accident that I shared. And there are many traumas through my childhood that I still don't talk about, that nobody knows about either. So, and that's okay. I think when we think about low points, trauma is interesting in that I have, to clarify first, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's something that I manage because there's been a number of traumas in my life from day dot, early childhood, and also, of course, significant trauma around my car accident and significant trauma after as well. And there's been a couple of, those real, and I don't call them low points because it's where, it can shape us. It's where we have options as well. And in my presentation, I spoke about that time that I looked at my face in the mirror for the first time. And that was that real, oh my God, this has happened. This is real. I mean, I looked at my face and I didn't look like this. I didn't look like I used to either. There was swelling and cuts and bruising, and one of my eyes was closed, fixed and dilated. I'm not blind in the right eye, which I'm grateful for. I've had a lot of, it's been a lot of persistence and focus to rebuild my face, quite literally, and my life. But that low of, oh, this has happened, she can't, you won't be able to do this. The life that I wanted, I was and still am a very energetic, adventurous, and life-loving person. You know, I'm extroverted by nature. That's probably pretty obvious. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, standing there actually, and I was like, that little room and all these, she won't be able to, I wanted to travel and I wanted to study and I wanted to, so many things I wanted to do. And I thought, no, I don't accept this. I don't accept this fear. I don't want to live here. So that was the low. That I can't explain that fear. There aren't really words to explain looking at yourself in the mirror. You're unrecognizable. At this point, I'm 19 years old. I'm much older than that now. But at this point, I'm 19 years old. And I'm looking at myself and I'm like, half my face is sunken and lower. My eyelids closed. I can't move my eye. There's cuts and things all over. My head's half shaved and there's a scar that runs ear to ear across the top of my head from the brain surgery and where the plates were put in my forehead. And I'm looking and I'm crying and I'm hearing she can't, she won't. And I'm thinking about everything else I've already lived through. And I say, no, that low point, that fear could have defeated me if I accepted it. But instead I went, okay, I accept that it's happened. What can I do? What do I want to do? So that was my low point, but it became my high point because I learned that I have choice, that I can choose to look at something a different way, that I can choose to do something with what I have, not with what I had, with what I have now. And that was all empowering. And I've gone back to that so many times. I've had serious health issues since, which endangered my life. And it's been again, okay, what are you going to do now, Deb? You're here. What are you going to do? So that's been a really powerful lesson for me. And I hope that sharing that is beneficial to those watching.
Thank you so much, Deb. I could continue to, chatting with you because there's so much I'm learning. And more than learning, just the energy of what y'all have been through and what y'all have been through and risen through is really very empowering. I know there are a lot of people. I would like to close with one last question because I know there are a lot of people who are watching who have gone through their personal traumatic journeys and now they're called to serve and they want to become coaches. How should they get started? Do you have any advice for them on how they can get started on this journey, how they can give back? Because I know that they want to. So could we circle around? I think we have about 10 minutes or so. Could we circle around and just hear on your advice and recommendation for these wannabe coaches? Because we need more of them, surely.
Well, I can start off. I'm not actually a coach, and I haven't gone down that path. I've developed a website that has a whole heap of useful information, and more importantly, I have.
And it need not be a coach. It could be like how you have, like they've gone through that tragedy, and how you turn that into an opportunity, and how they can also do that. If you have any.
Yeah, I think it's really important to grab what you can and be prepared to put some stuff together to try and provide some information. So mine is to provide information and inspiration to really make people prepare for if their life changes in a heartbeat, and it's very single focused. I know that's probably a little bit different from some of you all that may be more kind of coaches and facilitators, but mine is very single purpose and very and I love being able to speak. So I think the two things I would say to people that are listening is to actually share your story and to encourage people. I think those are the two takeaways.
And for me, I would say to utilize the supports that you have. So to be able to have those conversations with people, but to always remember that to not compare yourself to other people. That's so important because I think we often do sit and we compare and we think that we should be at the same rate or at the same pace in life as somebody else. So even like for myself, for example, using a wheelchair, like there's times where I'll look at somebody else that's using a wheelchair and I think that I should be at that same level or they should be at the same level. But it's really important to remember that, we're all individual and we've all got our own different experiences in life, but I think it's important to be able to share them, but also share what we're comfortable sharing as well, because there's parts of our lives that we don't want to share, and that's okay as well. And giving us the permission, or giving ourselves the permission to just share what we are comfortable with sharing, and working through that with people, and working with people that we're actually comfortable working with, so the people that we trust. So, and not just because we're told that that's the person to communicate with, because that's not necessarily going to be the person that we should be communicating with.
Yeah, and I really agree with that. And for me, I think everyone, they're born to that they can be a coach. So we all have the ability to guide people, to teach people, because we are all unique and have our unique ability. If there is some recommendation, first of all, don't underestimate yourself. And second is knowing your why, that like who you want to help. Do you want to use your story to empower others? Because in my business journey or my coaching journey to my clients, that we have so much challenges as an entrepreneur as well. So it's really important for us to remember the why at the start, so it can keep us going and going. We know that we have a bigger mission here. It's not about me, it's about others, it's about helping others. And those drives us continue keeping me forward. So this was some recommendation if anyone out there that want to use the story and become a coach or helping more people.
Beautiful. I completely agree with that as well. And I think what I would say here is in sort of two parts. So looking at it about creating, your own opportunity, and that's my thing, as you know, with tragic opportunities. And this is where sit in your truth of who you are and where you are, and take that time to look into yourself and what your beliefs are and what you truly believe and what you've learned from your experience. Take that time and choose to live authentically and own that. And this is where we can learn and make decisions for ourselves and attract the right things and move towards the right things. And also in terms of moving towards coaching or wanting to help others with your own stories, reach out to others that are doing what you want to do. Learn, if it's speaking that you want to do, look at ways of how you can do that. Reach out, speak to others. And also there's a bit of that, I'm sure we've all heard of imposter syndrome, where we all think we're not good enough, or your story is valid. Your pain is valid. What you've been through is valid. Someone will connect with you and you will help them. It doesn't have to be huge. It's not always, what we've all been through, there's some pretty massive stories here. It's not always on the surface, that massive, but there's so many people that connect to traumas. I can tell you I've got pretty deep trauma and pain from family relationships and what I've witnessed, which in many ways surpass what happened to me in my car accident, and vice versa. But see, the thing is, people connect to different parts of what you've experienced. So if you want to share, connect to others and live your truth, speak your truth. That's what I would say.
And to add on one last sentence is, it doesn't need to be perfect to be help others. You are born perfect.
That's right. No such thing as perfect. Perfect is speak from your heart. Sometimes the more perfect something is, it seems like it's recorded or people tune out. Speak with heart, speak from your heart and your truth.
that touches people. That really touches the
Yes.
heart, right? When it comes from the heart.
It does.
This is such amazing tips, and not tips, but really life advice on how they should move forward. I would like to end the session by really thanking all of you. I have heard your words, but even more, I've felt the energy. I know everyone watching is feeling that, and I really trust that it is causing ripples in their lives as we speak, and these ripples are spreading out. I really feel that. Thank you. I would also like to offer an invitation on behalf of Dr. Yugandhar and Grandma Prisha for you all to join the World United Council. And if you would like to join us in the council and help organize or be part of the team, please let us know. There are lots of events coming up. We are now doing this country-wise, and we are really trying to start things from the grassroots level and really connect to as many voices in different places as we can and bring them all together. So we would love to have you there. And really, thank you for sharing your life and your insights with us.
Thank you for having us. And thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for being a wonderful moderator too. It was lovely, been lovely connecting with you.
Thank you.
Love Mancy energy. And thank you everyone to share the stage today.
Yes, thank you. It was my absolute honor to be amongst all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you all too.
Thank you, Mel.